Dictatorship. He's talking about dictatorship. But I don't know if you're talking about
Yes, he
dictatorship.
is.
And I also feel that because of the history of the last 100 years, we view dictatorship with a very negative outlook. But
Yes.
Oh shit.
historically, from an extremely macro human perspective, could a one leader rule actually be the solution? Like in the case of Genghis Khan, like in the case of, I don't
Oh
know,
my
who else has been
god.
one leader who's been epic?
So, hello and welcome to another video on the channel. This is a reaction video to something on BeerBiceps YouTube channel. This is a clip from an interview he did with a gentleman known as Rajiv Malhotra. And if you don't know Rajiv Malhotra is the NRI uncle who was a huge fan of Swami Nityananda, the guy who ran away and started his own country, by the way. And he
As
has
we
also
all
been
should.
instrumental in He's also been instrumental in promoting superstitious practices like third eye activation in kids and stuff. Right now, I have Meghnad with me, and I wanted him to react to this with me because he's also doing something else that is related to beer biceps. We are pointing out things, we are pointing out flaws in people's content because there are flaws there, and those flaws need to be addressed. Sure, we get views as a result of it, but that is not the main goal. The main goal, if one of you objecting to this content is a doctor, perhaps you do get paid for being a doctor, but surely that is not the reason why you're a doctor. Or maybe it is, who knows. Maybe you are a doctor because you need to make money.
When we say democracy is good, we say that. I want to offer you a contrarian view. You don't run a company on democracy. Mukesh Ambani doesn't say, I'll take all the factory workers and they will vote what to do. You don't run your cricket team on democracy. The captain decides. It is not कि सारे vote करेंगे अब क्या bowling होनी चाहिए क्या होना चाहिए. I mean, you'd never win if you were democracy.
I think this is an important point to stop at. Like seconds into the conversation, there's already something problematic.
इतना सारा content? Oh my god. No, wait,
What do you think of this argument that democracy is not useful because it is not universally applicable?
this is a very simplistic thing of looking at things, which I also do a lot of times, right? Which is to explain how you as a citizen are actually the boss, while the people who are the politicians are actually your employees, right? Because we are paying taxes, right? So
Yeah.
I give the example of in a company, right? When you have like a employee and you are being told to make Excel sheets, like report bana, Excel sheet bana, etc. Now you do that, right? And then the boss tells you ki, oh, your report is good, bad, jo bhi hai, whatever, and then that is how you advance or do your work. But in the next day you come and your boss is standing there with the chai ki ketli, and then he feeds you idli sambar, and then he's giving you a foot massage. And aisa to nahi hota na, like, I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at that analogy, that is what we are essentially doing to most politicians today, right? Which is like we sort of assume that we are the employees and they are the bosses, but that's the opposite. यहाँ पे I think he's using the same device, right? Which is oh, CEO थोड़ी पूछता है कि क्या democracy. He does answer to a board. In a nicely run legit company, they do answer to a board and they do have to care about their employees. If employees do a strike, that is democracy. That is them expressing their opinion about something they're unhappy about, and they
And
have to act.
also, how valid is it to say that democracy is not useful because CEOs don't use it? It's not useful because armies don't use it.
But
Like
they do use
the
it,
army is
right?
not
That's what I'm saying. Like
what?
the act of democracy, when you reduce it to just voting, right?
Hmm.
That is what he's talking about. और cricket team में थोड़ी कोई vote करता है, right? In कि
So
batting
that's how
किसको करना है.
he's doing it. Yeah, he's reducing
Yeah,
it to that.
yeah.
But there is a thing that's called workplace democracy, where the question raised is that in a democracy, you elect the people who have power over you. But
Hmm.
at a workplace, you don't, because your superiors are chosen by people superior to them. So it's a top
Hmm.
down thing, not a
Hmm.
bottom up thing. And
Hmm.
more people, like they were making the case for cooperative societies and cooperative society nahi, cooperative workplaces, etc. But that's a different matter. I'm saying ki, so it's a bit of a weird flex to say that, you know what, army doesn't have democracy, so the country should not have democracy either.
No, but that's what I'm saying, right? When you reduce your entire democratic setup into just the one act of voting in 5 years, right? That is where the problem is. Where even in a company, right? even in a company, the CEO does care about the employees, right? Because that is what is linked to productivity, right?
Hmm.
So he will make sure that they are comfortable, they are, like they're getting like compensated whatever amount they can afford, and therefore they will work to create profits for the shareholders, right?
Hmm.
And this guy is answerable to the shareholders. That is in another way a democracy as well. Democracy is when there is a collection of people who are making a decision through someone, right? That is essentially what happens in companies as well. It's, of course, there is more of a top down approach when it comes to like corporations and even the army. Like generals will tell you what to do, right? But who
Hmm.
is telling the generals what to do? It's elected representatives that are from the democracy, right? So
Yeah.
that's the
It's a
point
it's a
there.
far more complex system than
Yeah.
he's giving it credit for, is what you're
Yep.
saying.
Yep.
Okay.
You would not run a military on a democracy. You would not ask all the Jawans, what should be our strategy. The military general knows more. So in all these competitive domains, whether it is industry, whether it is sports, whether it is military, it is not run by democracy, but those who have more knowledge, who have more expertise, they make decisions. But in the case of politics, we are assuming that the average Indian, everybody has equal say. The very highly knowledgeable person has as much a vote as the person who knows very little. So that's and democracy is also not something that is a Vedic system. We don't have a democracy. The ancient system of Dharma Shastra and Artha Shastra was not based on democracy. It was based on a king who was a noble king, highly educated king, and he knew what is best for other people.
So his first argument was that essentially knowledgeable people take decisions for everyone in all these settings that he said, which is military and whatever, right? And then his next like conclusion from that was that, oh, but in a democracy, when we like have everybody has an equal vote, so not everyone is knowledgeable, so how are you taking decisions on how who to
It's a
elect, etc., right?
very elitist view of thing. Like, yeah, those people, they don't know what is good for them. Someone higher up should decide what is good for them. It's a
Yeah.
recipe for disaster.
And there is nobody in existence who can know everything except probably an AI. But like I'm just saying that
Except
there is
probably mythical characters from the Vedas.
also that, yes.
Yeah,
The king did not know everything. The king was a probably like line of kings, so like family mein born hua tha, so he didn't have knowledge, he had luck, right? And that is I think, like you have to understand the privilege that the king had, during
yeah,
that time. Of course there were like rebellions and etc where the generals took over the king, and then they also started their own dynasty though. After that
yeah,
they also had children and grandchildren, and they were still kings, right? So they were not knowledgeable, right? They happened to be at the right place at the right time and applied the right amount of strategies to get something done. That is exactly what army generals also do, right? It is knowledge of the land, of course, it's knowledge
hmm,
of weapons, and it's knowledge of what you have with you, the resources that you have, and also knowledge of what the other side has. And then you gather all this knowledge and then you execute to do a particular task, right? So you can't say that everyone like that argument doesn't make any sense.
I think what he's trying to say is that democracy is too chaotic. You ask everyone as if they know what is good. What is
Yes, they
good can
do.
only be, yeah, no, as in it is the wisdom of the crowds, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. Democracy is going to be chaotic. Not everyone is going to agree on something. So Rajiv Malhotra saying this is doubly ironic because he's someone who has written previously in his books, if he
Hmm.
indeed wrote them, about anxieties that emerge out of difference. Like the
Hmm.
Western mind looks at the Indian situation and finds chaos, is unable to relate to it, and therefore says, this is making me anxious, they must become like me. So what Rajiv Malhotra here is doing is that, because he comes from a privileged class of society, A, he's a Brahmin, B, he's an NRI who's rich in America, by the way, runs an entire organization or something. And he's looking at India and saying, "Yeah, those people don't know what is good for them. There should be one person who knows more than everyone, and he should make all the
So
decisions."
to that point, right, and that is where I think an understanding of politics also needs to come in, right? The one thing that you need to understand about BeerBiceps and his sort of brand of politics is this whole simplistic sort of view of what it is, right?
Hmm.
for example, right, he says that, oh, they don't know what they want. Like, no, stupid people don't know what they want is what he's essentially leading towards, right? The thing is, politics, when you think about it, when it's applied on a policy basis, it is first to fulfill basic needs: food, clothing, shelter, right? Like, सबको food, clothing, shelter equally मिलना चाहिए, justice मिलना चाहिए, like all laws should be applicable together, right? The making of these rules is what politics is, right?
Hmm.
The debates and discussions that lead to making of these rules is what politics is, right? So when you say that a person doesn't know what they want, they do, though. Like, I mean, like, basic things. Like, I was in West
Yeah.
Bengal covering the elections. Even a child who we interviewed, 12-year-old child, knew कि मुझे वहां पे ब्रिज चाहिए, मुझे स्कूल जाना है बस, लाइक, एंड मुझे ये बोट से नहीं जाना है रोज, मुझे लाइक, और आई हैव टू गो लाइक ऑल द वे अराउंड, एंड वहां पे मुझे 1.5 घंटा लगता है जाने के लिए, एक्सेट्रा. द चाइल्ड न्यू शी वांटेड अ ब्रिज, and she was like, the people who will give me that bridge are politicians, because they're democratically elected, and the election aa
Yeah.
raha hai, so let's make this an election issue, was her whole point, right? Again, 12-year-old, so you would assume that she doesn't know anything,
I think
zero
Rajiv
knowledge about
Malhotra's
the world.
I think Rajiv Malhotra's anxiety is emerging from the fact that when he makes a list of things that are needed, they don't
Yes,
match with the
with,
list of things that this child you mentioned might mention. So he'll say
absolutely,
we need to be a dharmic republic of some kind, right?
yeah,
And the girl would say, "Nahi, mere ko bridge chahiye," and he'll say, "Nahi, clearly these poor people don't know what they want,
exactly.
what they
Also, like,
need."
things like like, I know for a fact that a lot of people are saying that टमाटर बहुत महंगे हो गए हैं. Their need is टमाटर कम होने चाहिए, right?
Yeah,
Because टमाटर खाना है हमको.
huh.
What sort of genius brain do you need to think this way, right?
Yeah,
These are basic things that can be addressed by politics and
yeah, yeah,
democracy,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
that's
these are.
that's the
I would
whole
say Rajiv
point.
Malhotra's problems are first world problems, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
He has the perspective of an upper caste rich Indian living in the USA. He's looking at India and he's saying,
Mm,
"Yeah, what do these people know?
yeah.
Someone like me should has a better handle on what is really needed on a macro level." When
Mm.
democracy is not even about the macro level, it's about many micros coming together to create some kind of temporary macro.
So we have to question whether Indian constitution has worked or not, because Indian constitution also has some
Wow.
issues, I think. A family does not make decisions on a democracy. Some people know more. I mean, some may know more about cooking and what's good for your health, and they make decisions for the children. Somebody else may know more about how to make investments and so on. You do not say, okay, husband, wife, and 3 kids, and you're going to sit and vote and all that, because people have expertise in something, and that expertise ought to be respected.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it gets
Holy
darker
shit.
and darker with time, and you will be blown away by the end of it. I assure you. But about this
Describing
family
a
point,
household, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
about this family thing, even the family doesn't work on the basis of input of the leader of the house, right? J- uh, I think it would be an
यहाँ पे
extremely
पेट्रियार्की
unhealthy
ऐसे
family.
भर भर के बाहर आ रहा है उसका,
Yeah,
पेट्रियार्की भी बाहर आ रहा है एकदम ऐसे उमड़ उमड़ के
ये
बाहर
वो
आ रहा
बालकनी वाले कोऑपरेटिव हाउसिंग सोसाइटी वाले व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप वाले अंकल वाला पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू बेसिकली, एंड इट इज ऑन सो कॉल्ड इंडिया
है.
स्मार्टेस्ट पॉडकास्ट.
Yeah,
If there was a family where the patriarchal head of the family made every decision for everyone, it would be a toxic hellhole. The child
absolutely.
needs to be asked what it needs. The
Hmm.
uh, other members of the family need to be asked what they need, and this person needs to be able to make decision on the basis of that. The fact that he thinks a family means one person making all decisions itself is a very, very terrible idea.
And again, like, his whole thing about democracy comes down to, again, what he said, right? Or vote थोड़ी करते हैं कोई. But that doesn't make, the voting is not the only way to express your opinion also, right?
Hmm.
Like, you can, as a child, for example, go to your father and say कि मुझे cricket bat चाहिए. फादर कैन मेक अ रिटर्न डिमांड कि तू ना मैथ्स में 100
Maths में
नंबर
अच्छा
ला,
कर,
मैं
हाँ,
तुझे
हाँ.
दे दूंगा. दिस इज अ
It's a
डिस्कशन
negotiation.
एंड डिबेट, इट्स अ नेगोशिएशन, एंड
Hmm.
वंस बेसिकली ही डज स्कोर मे बी 100, राइट, ही कैन गो एंड डिमांड टू द डैड सेइंग कि आपने बोला था आप मुझे दो, right? And then the dad will be like, cool, chal leke aate hain. And then, or not, or he'll beat him up or whatever, right? But that beat him up scenario is not what you should go for.
It's not the ideal scenario. Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
not.
It seems like all these possibilities are there, and this guy saying, "Wow, he's beating people up. This is the ideal situation we should aspire to.
And this whole thing about expertise, like household में expertise, कोई cooking में expert है, कोई like पैसे कमाने में expert है,
Gender
apparently,
roles,
right?
basically.
Gender roles, right? Again, very WhatsApp level thinking, right? Where it's
हाँ.
like, oh, ये defined roles है, so we should all do that, like whatever it is. Again, the whole thing that I think he is coming out of this clip is that his view is very one dimensional. Right? He doesn't even know that other households exist properly in this,
No,
probably in this
I'm sure he
universe.
does. The thing, here's the thing. He would not be where he is today had it not been for democracy and an equal society, right?
Yeah.
Right? He was
Yep.
he's a brown man living in an Christian majority country,
Mhm.
and he has gotten to where he is because this society had some kind of a commitment towards equality. Had
Yep.
they not had it, had he not been able to assert that yes, I also deserve to do all the things that people everywhere do. If Saudi Arabia were to be taken as an example, where they do have a top-down system where one family makes all the decisions and everything, this guy in his young age would never have chosen to go there. He went to
Absolutely not.
America. He went
Absolutely.
to a
Yeah, yeah.
democracy.
Yeah.
So in our tradition also there was adhikar, authority in the guru or in an elder person who knew more about that subject matter. And so this idea that 1.4 billion people, and based on everybody who's over a certain age, suddenly he has the equal right to everybody else, there's no logic to it. And I think the future of democracies in the world is yet to be, it's not unclear whether what will happen, because United States, which is sort of considered the bastion of democracy today, is in trouble. Internally, United States is in trouble. There's almost a civil war intellectually going on between the extreme left and the extreme right.
He is in United States.
Yeah.
Left versus right war intellectually. There are two aspects of this. One, he is only able to engage with this on the intellectual level and not on the level of social reality, because
Right.
he doesn't have to deal with it. He's rich there and he's sovereign here. He himself would not be where he is today had it not been for the democratic situation in the USA. And democracy is always going to be chaotic here or there. That is the nature of it. It's going to be every 5 years, people disagree with the people who have power over them and they say, yeah, this guy didn't do that well, or this guy did okay, and we will support him, we will bring him back to power and stuff.
Yeah. But like I want to like see what he does after this, because he just said that there is a civil war going on intellectually within
Yeah.
America where
Which
he
means
lives.
that's a very fancy way of saying that some people disagree with some people.
Yeah, I mean, and that is what happens
It's
in a
always
democracy,
going
right?
on.
People
Yeah.
disagree with everyone intellectually all the time. You don't call it civil war, though. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, if that's the thing. Like, so, like for example, us reacting to this video, which is
Yeah.
like maybe different crowds, right? Like your following, my following versus BeerBiceps ka following will be very different intellectually, thinking wise, ideology wise, all sorts of things, right? If we are disagreeing with each other, are we having a civil war with BeerBiceps now? Is that the logic we are going with here right now?
Well,
Like,
you realize he mentioned that in our parampara there has been this
mm,
idea of adhikar, where the person who knows better makes the decisions.
right.
So he's basically talking about Brahminical authority here,
Oh,
because that
that's
has
true.
been the situation.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, that's the thing, right? Brahminical patriarchy, basically. That's what he's
Yeah.
talking
The
about
whole
here, right?
package, basically.
Yeah, whole
This video is
package.
a
Yeah,
gem.
yeah.
We will talk about this. We'll expand this thought about
Yes.
America in a separate section.
Yes.
I actually want to talk a little bit more about
Announce the
democracy,
BeerBiceps
Yes.
actually understanding
more from the
things.
perspective of, if not democracy, then what?
Mhm.
Because a lot of people are listening to this podcast and thinking, dictatorship! He's talking about dictatorship! But I don't know if you're talking about
Yes, he
dictatorship.
is.
And I also feel that because of the history of the last 100 years, we view dictatorship with a very negative outlook. But
Yes!
Oh, shit.
historically, from an extremely macro human perspective, could a one leader rule actually be the solution? Like in the case of Genghis Khan, like in the case of, I don't
Oh
know,
my
who else has
God.
been one leader who's been epic?
Wait, so he should have stopped at like dictatorship is bad. That's it. Yes. Khatam. Don't go with but
But
historically Genghis
BeerBiceps
Khan.
has been on the record saying similar things about Hitler also.
Oh, that's true.
Do
Yeah,
we
I've seen
do
one
we
of those
really
clips.
know Are we really? Do we have
I-
any idea what was really the truth? Who
yeah,
knows? Maybe the really bad person was not really bad and was really good instead.
yeah. But the thing is, that's what. So beer biceps actually got it right. Like
Yeah, yeah, he
he
got it.
was pointing towards dictatorship. Yes, beer biceps, and
Because some part
you
of his
don't need
brain
to
is
make
working
fun
when
of
he
it.
hears something like this and he says, this sounds like dictatorship. Yes, it does. You're right.
Dude, the thing is here, I think need to point out his style of interview also a little bit, right? Which is
Hmm.
when you have someone like this Rajiv fellow, right, who is clearly pointing
Unhinged.
towards dictatorship, right?
Huh.
Unhinged, right? I mean, pointing towards dictatorship. I mean, democracy nahi karna hai, I don't like it, whatever. And then like he's just leaving it unsaid, right? So
Hmm.
beer biceps comes in and basically, यहाँ पे सब लोग बोलेंगे, oh, dictatorship, that's not how you do it, right? You need to be like, do you mean, are you talking about dictatorship? Are you saying it's better? Right, and you end it there, right?
Yeah.
Or you say, historically we know that dictatorship has led to a lot of people being killed, so
Hmm.
dictatorship is bad. So are you saying the alternative to democracy is dictatorship, but then how can it be good? End, right? That is how you ask questions. You don't go like, सब लोग बोलेंगे dictatorship है." That's
Yeah,
not.
but the thing is, do you think that the interviews that Beer Biceps does can be classified as uh, journalistic on any level? This is a
No,
podcast at the end of the day.
no, no, no,
He
no,
calls
it's
people,
not
he talks to them.
journalistic, but
Like,
there is
on some level,
I
I don't even expect it from him.
no, that's the thing. Like I also like was thinking that okay, so he's giving platform to people like this to say whatever they want. There is a giant audience he has which is genuinely consuming his content, right?
Hmm.
And you need to also understand that the people who are actually watching him, if you read the comments, right, there is like a ton of people making fun of him, right? But also there are people who are like, अरे रणवीर भैया क्या सही पॉडकास्ट करते हो, मेरा तो स्पिरिचुअल अवेकनिंग हो रहा है यहाँ पे,
Hmm.
राइट? लिटरली देयर आर लाइक सो मेनी
Yeah,
ऑफ
yeah,
दिस.
yeah, yeah.
लाइक वो जब येटी की बात करता है, भूत प्रेत की बात करता है, जो भी करता है, लेकिन सर मैंने ना आईएएस का प्रिपरेशन कर रहा हूं, मैं रात को ना आपका एक पॉडकास्ट देख के बिल्कुल मजा आ जाता है, येटी के नीचे कमेंट किया उसने, राइट? आई लाइक, so
ये
this is the
आदमी
kind
एक
of
दिन
people watching.
एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन सर्विसेज में जाएगा और जब लोगों के गांव में रात को डाके पड़ेंगे तो बोलेंगे ये भी हो सकता है.
येटी
Who
भी हो
knows?
सकता है, राइट? बियर बाइसेप्स भैया ने बोला था, हम बड़े हो रहे थे तब हमको बोला था ये सब. दैट्स द थिंग. सो लाइक दिस इज डैमेजिंग एंड नीड्स टू बी कॉल्ड आउट. Like
Yeah,
that's what I
yeah.
was getting to, like, which is if we just dismiss this as a podcast, I don't think anymore we should do it, because did a series full of ministers of the government supported by MyGov, which is basically taxpayer money, right?
Hmm.
Now it's gone to a level where he is now talking to people who make decisions about our lives on a day-to-day basis and letting them spew whatever they want.
Hmm.
That needs to be called out. I mean, Rajiv
Yeah, yeah.
Malhotra, all said and done, ठीक है, बोलने दे उसको, राइट? लोग कंज्यूम करेंगे, बट व्हेन अ इलेक्टेड रिप्रेजेंटेटिव इज डूइंग द सेम थिंग एंड ही इज डूइंग द सेम स्टाइल विद देम, दैट्स प्रोपेगेंडा.
Yeah, I think Rajiv Malhotra, like neither of us here, just to clarify, is saying that Rajiv Malhotra does not have the right to think the things that he thinks
Of
or
course,
say
yeah.
the things that he has said. He does. But it is also equally important to point out that A, he is incorrect, and B, this has serious damaging consequences for
Hmm.
society because it is poisoning the minds of young people who are going to be the future of this country.
So
Yeah.
I am actually working on a video. It will take a while because I'm doing a video on his latest political interviews myself. Right? I'm learning editing and doing it. So time लग रहा है उसके लिए. तो आएगा मेरे channel पे आएगा. Like, I mean, you will put a link
Hmm.
ऊपर. आएगा अभी थोड़े दिनों में. So वहाँ पे this is the point I'm making also, right? Which is when you have a beer biceps who is like in the very first interview telling people that I'm here to make politics unpolitical. I have not dealt with politics till now. I have not spoken to politicians till now, but I'm so excited about this. And he like does like a series of interviews with politicians, and he's like, मुझे ना मेरा political awareness बढ़ाना है, but I'm a centrist. Like the whole thing is that अब ये ना मेरे टेरिटरी में आ रहा है.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, like I think I know a lot more about politics than he does.
Yeah.
So I just want to like let people know that now that his political interviews have started, where people like Anand Ranganathan have started appearing on his podcast saying that Hindus are the eighth most discriminated, like ranking wise, discriminated population in the country or whatever, and this guy doesn't counter it,
Yeah.
that's a problem.
Singapore.
Okay.
So I would say, first of all, a presidential system is better than a parliamentary system for India, because in a presidential system, you have more stability. You elect the president directly, not through parliament. Because if you elect the parliament and then the parliament elects the government, the prime minister, then what you have is even a small little party has a lot of leverage, a lot of bargaining power. Because if somebody who's got a few votes can decide between this coalition and that coalition, and you have a wobbly system. They don't have security for the full 5-year term, and they can't make courageous actions. Whereas in a presidential system, little parties can't have too much clout because the president is elected directly, and you have stability for the entire term. I would say that, in fact, I wouldn't be surprised. Let me make a prediction.
I will go back to the prediction part in a minute. But
Yeah.
he not just saying ki anyone having a say in what should happen is a problem. But now
Yeah.
he's saying only the parliament needs to be done away with. People can vote directly for the president.
Right. And also he's talking about USA, which he just said that is having an
Yeah.
intellectual civil war and khatam ho raha hai, whatever,
Yeah.
right? That's what he's
He said
talking about.
presidential system is good. No, he said USA is not doing very well. But now he's saying the presidential system is good. If the presidential system is good, then USA must be doing better, right?
That's
Clearly,
so weird. Yeah.
clearly the powers of the presidential system have failed to apply to the situation that he was referring to 5 minutes ago.
It's bizarre. Like, I don't know how he went from this to this, but the thing is also that he does not understand the presidential system also, right? I mean, like, the fact that
No,
they
the
have
list
like a
of things that he does
Congress.
not understand is quite long, but please
That's
go on.
true. But no, but I'm saying that the fact that they have a Congress, they have a state legislature also, they
Yeah.
have like very town legislatures also who have like their individual powers, right? So even the president can't make
No, I
rules
think the
for like,
presidential system that he's referring to is Singapore's.
oh, he's talking about Singapore.
Singapore,
He's
yeah.
not talking about the USA.
No,
Oh,
not
okay,
really.
okay, okay.
Nah.
Okay,
Because
okay.
no,
I should find
he's
out.
basically going for a very simple system that can really apply in a country as small as Singapore, but it is
Yes,
impossible to apply
yes.
to a country
Also,
as large and diverse as India, right?
he talks about the small political parties, right? There's a reason why we have small political parties, because of our diversity, right?
Yeah.
Like a Dalit group, basically, if they feel like they're not being represented by a majority Brahmin party, they can start their own small party, right? Or a big party like a BSP, right? Then or like, like, if like radical Hindus think that they're not being represented, they will form something like a Shiv Sena, right?
Yeah.
Like the Bala Sahib Thackeray ka Shiv Sena, right? And they will get representation also, right?
And
So
then fight
that's
with the
the whole
BJP.
point. And then fight with the B. That's what I'm saying. Like the point of smaller regional parties is to basically preserve and protect the diversity that this country has, right?
Yeah.
You're not a monolith. There are not just two sides. There are many sides. There are many communities, many languages. I don't think he understands that, or he doesn't look at it that way. Because
The old man has spent too much time in America looking at
yeah,
India as a whole, because
yeah.
from there India looks like one big country, right? When you
Mm,
live in India, you are aware of
mm.
local concerns and smaller issues and the concerns of people who are not necessarily the national majority and stuff like that. So all
True.
these are unnecessary complications from his perspective, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. कौन करे इतना? Just Singapore बन
कौन
जाओ
करे?
overnight.
Not be surprised if Modi becomes president. Modi could become president. Retire as prime minister and become president. There's nothing that says you can't become president.
First of all, is that true?
I wait. What did he say? That he should retire as
He's
prime minister and
predicting
become president?
he's predicting that Narendra Modi should or will become president, stop being prime minister and become president instead.
But
Which
right now,
sounds a
prime
lot
minister
like
is more powerful.
Russia, right?
Yeah, it's bizarre. I don't understand what this logic is. I mean, prime minister. So we have the most powerful. Technically, the person is on paper the president, right? Controller of the army. But that's literally written in the constitution that the president has to obey the council of ministers, which is headed by the prime minister. Which means the prime minister is technically the most powerful person in the country, वो प्रेसिडेंट क्यों बनेगा? आई मीन लाइक रिटायर होके प्रेसिडेंट बन जाओ. Is this like a dream presidential election scenario that he's thinking about?
I think what he's saying is that there is nothing preventing someone, like if he stops being the prime minister, he can then become the president of India. Is there any rule preventing that from happening?
I'm not sure actually. I don't think there is one preventing it.
So technically,
Thinking
Narendra Modi
about
can
it.
become the president of India and be the nominal head of the state,
I'll have
which
to
will,
check this, but yeah, I think that would be. I mean, it can be possible. I'm thinking, yeah, I think
Hmm.
that can be possible technically.
Yeah. But
I haven't read anything
what
that
powers
prevents
will
it.
he have as a president? Let's continue watching and then we'll
Uh-huh.
comment on this.
And the Constitution gives the president enough authority. It has never been used. The Indian Constitution gives president a lot of authority, but it has not been used. A strong person who becomes president could make the presidency the center of power and center of decision making.
You mean
No, no, just can't. That's what I was talking about. Like the Council of Ministers is directly basically the president is answerable to the Council of Ministers. The most powerful thing a president can actually do is sit on a bill and not
Yeah,
pass it.
sit on it for like 2 times, and then
Yeah,
they
so
have
there
to
are
accept.
twice, and then they have to pass it. But like famously, APJ Abdul Kalam sat on one of the bills and like did not pass it for a while, etc. But ultimately, I think it was cleared later. But the thing is, that is the most that a president can do. These people know, they feel like, oh, president's rule declare kar do, right? It's like the president is now ruling over the state.
Yeah.
No, the Council of Ministers is basically ruling over the state through the president then, right? So the central government essentially is calling all the shots in that state. The
Hmm.
Kashmir thing, when they declared president's rule in that state, that meant that Delhi was controlling the state. That didn't mean that the president was suddenly like super powerful. "Arey, main to tab sabko I'll shot
This
call the
sounds like
shots."
one of those things, right? We study in history textbooks about Indus Valley civilization, and then
Yeah,
these guys make videos about nobody knows this, but
yeah,
falana, falana, falana. So apparently, the same applies to civics textbooks also. Because I don't remember much of my high school civics textbooks, even though I know that you do a show
mhm,
where you invite people and you talk about civics textbook. But this is something I remember from primary school or high school, that the president
mm.
doesn't have much power. The most they can do is that when a
Yeah.
bill comes to them, they can say no, but when it comes a second time, they have to accept it, right?
Right, right. And also, like, I think the one way where a president can actually be powerful is if the government doesn't exist during a period, right? Which is like
Hmm.
basically Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha completely dissolved, no government there, etc. That is when the president becomes actually the authority that they are supposed to be, right? Which is like a backup plan, right? That
Hmm.
is literally it. President is a backup plan. And
That's also what happened to like in Russia, right? But Putin declared himself
yeah,
for,
president for life or something. Yeah.
no, until a certain year, but then guess it
I
might
think
as well
Xi
be for like
Jinping did that. Xi
Xi
Jinping,
Jinping did.
someone did that. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is happening in a lot of countries, and these guys are starting to harbor fantasies about it happening in India, and they
Hmm.
appear to be under the impression this will be a great thing. But at this point, are you more amused by this interview or more horrified?
I'm equal, both actually. Yeah, I'm amused and also horrified.
right now,
Right
if
now,
after PM Modi's term
he
as a
could.
PM,
Yes.
he becomes president, there
Yes.
are dormant rules
Yes.
which can be applied,
Yes.
and then you can kind of shift power from the PM seat to the president seat
Yes.
forever.
Yeah, you not forever during the term of the presidency.
All right.
Can you?
ये क्या
Is that
कर रहा है
possible?
boss ये?
What dormant
क्या
powers are we
बकवास कर
talking
रहा है
about?
ये? Like, I mean, I don't understand where he's pulling this out of. What I what?
Are you sure there
Dormant
are not
powers.
dormant powers? Like, the moment they become president, they feel the energy surging through their body, and like lightning bolts start coming out of their eyes.
You know, this brings me to the emergency also, right? You know, the
Uh-huh.
emergency was declared by Indira Gandhi, right? You know,
Hmm.
the president was, forget his name, but like there is this whole thing, no, like about how the emergency was declared overnight, and the president had to essentially consult the constitution to see if there is a provision that allows them to do that when there is a non-emergency situation, right? Again, I'm a little vague on this, don't take my word for it, but again, in that video where which
Hold
I
on.
told you,
Can you just repeat that entire part? The president was Fakhruddin Ali Ahmad.
Fakhruddin Ali Ahmad. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. That's him. There is a famous sort of anecdote of Ali Ahmad being woken up at night and then given a top secret document about declaring emergency, basically, and then the whole thing and how it went down. And he apparently refused first, and then he had to say yes because he spoke to Indira Gandhi, something like that, right? So
Hmm.
again, that video has it. I'm very loose on the details of that story right now, off the top of my head. But the thing is, this doesn't. I don't know where he's getting this from. Honestly, I mean, like,
I think if there is one thing I've learned about the BeerBiceps podcast is that where they get information from is the least of their priorities. They can just
he's also
imagine
playing
things,
it up.
making up yeah, he is. They just
Mm.
make up fantasy stories and just feed it to their audience because they frankly don't give a damn about whether they learn something true or not. An old man will come and make some random story, and this guy will say, yeah, random story +1.
Yeah, that's true. My meter is going from amused to horrifying very fast.
It's going to get more horrifying.
Are
Wait.
baapre.
So he could say, okay, I did comply with this thing that after age 75 or whatever age one should retire. So I'm no longer PM, but I've become president. He could do that. There's nothing that says he couldn't do that.
But that decision cannot be taken unilaterally, right? Nor would it be healthy for someone like the prime minister says, "Aaj se main prime minister nahi, aaj se main president hu." There has to be a process. There has to be an
Oh yeah,
appointment
yeah. There's
process,
an
right?
election process. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. There is a ranked election process in
Hmm.
parliament, right? Which is like you have to give preference, candidate preferences, right? Like all the people who are. I think there is an electoral college which makes up the MLAs and the MPs and like all across the country, and they have to vote. And there is a ranked system where you have to rank each candidate. And
Hmm.
essentially, when the presidential elections happen, it's usually a consensus candidate, right? Like
Yeah.
all parties basically come together and sort of have like one or two names which they basically decide will be the consensus candidate, right? In this case, it was Draupadi Murmu, because a lot of a lot of people were okay with it. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
But
And there
the
was some
reason
campaigning
why.
happening, like different parties coming together, putting forward their own candidate.
Oh yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah. But
If Rajiv Malhotra has a problem with the democratic process, then I have to conclude that he's not a huge fan of the democratic process that would go into Narendra Modi becoming president. Narendra Modi can't simply say, "Aaj se main president hu." That's
Nahin,
not
nahin.
how it
Obviously,
works.
there's a whole process you have to go through, right? And also, like, one more thing is that the reason why people actually usually come to a consensus very quickly during a presidential elections is because they are electing a backup,
Hmm.
right? They all know that the council of ministers is basically going to take call the shots anyway. We just need a person there who acts as a backup, who passes the laws, stamps them, does all the things, is there for all the grand ceremonies, etc., etc. What a president does. President
Hmm.
also gives a speech every year, right? Which is like in the budget session, they will come to the central hall, they will give a speech. Even that speech is word to word written by the
Yep.
council of ministers. The
Yep.
government writes the president's speech. They are not supposed to say a different word, right? Because that speech is actually circulated to each member of parliament, and they can amend it. They can amend a speech that has been already given by the president. The
Hmm.
reason is that the council of ministers is basically using that mouth to give their words.
The president is basically a rubber stamp.
It is,
Now,
yeah.
let me ask you this. Let me ask you this before we proceed. Uh, we have seen that a number of systems were in place, and those systems
Mm.
have either been subverted or twisted into unrecognizable tasks. Is it possible to do that to the system of the president? Like, is it possible for a prime minister like Narendra Modi to say, "To hell with the system, I'm just president from now on"?
I mean, there is always a possibility. Cannot deny that, right? Like
But it
if
will
you
not be
have.
constitutional.
Sure, but then, like, in a way, if you take over the entire courts, who are supposed to basically declare whether it's constitutional or not, right?
Hmm.
That's how dictatorships come about, right? Where
Yeah.
all
Institutions
the
get
three
hijacked.
pillars who are supposed to keep a check on each other so that no one exceeds their prerogative. Three being, one is legislature, executive, and judiciary. Executive is the bureaucracy, right? So even that is included. So even the bureaucrats can prevent this from happening, right? That's the whole
Hmm.
point. Like, a politician without bureaucrats is nothing, because the
Yeah.
bureaucrats are the ones that are executing the orders of the politician, right?
Hmm.
The bureaucrats without the judiciary is also nothing, because judiciary is the one keeping a watch on both the politicians and the executive, right?
Hmm.
Meanwhile, the executive are also basically trying to make sure that all the orders passed by both sides are happening at the same time, right? Justice is delivered, and, like, for example, police is executive,
Hmm.
right? Police is the one that is ensuring justice happens. The courts are the ones directing in a particular case that justice should happen here. Police are the ones who are supposed to execute it, right? So,
Hmm.
like, all these branches are telling each other what to do and keeping a sort of a watch on each other, right? Now
Yeah.
now if you
It's
want to
a system of checks and
completely,
balances.
yeah, if you want to completely crush that system and
Hmm.
make it like unilateral, right, which
Hmm.
is then the whole presidential thing that
Rajiv
sorry,
Malhotra, not Masan.
Malhotra is talking about. Malhotra ji is talking about, yeah. In essence, he's basically saying कि checks and balances होने ही नहीं चाहिए, एक एक
हाँ.
आदमी को दे दो सब कुछ,
एक आदमी को दे दो सारा power because my
ज्ञानी आदमी है,
my NRI has does not understand
yeah,
complexity.
exactly.
And as president, you have your term secure. You cannot be through no confidence motion kicked out and all that. And you can run the country. You can make a lot of policies. So that's a more stable system. You elect the right guy, and then you let him be there for a while. You don't kick him out and worry about whether he's coming back in 2024 or not. You just leave him there for 10, 20 years. Because you need to set this country right. It's a 100-year project, because we've been colonized for 1200 years. Colonization is not just British, it's also Islamic colonization.
He's
Okay.
beginning to get to his real point. But is
Okay,
it possible to, like, we already discussed this, but it's not possible for someone to become president from prime minister unilaterally. That's one thing.
I mean, it
Second,
is technically possible, but you will have to do a lot of unconstitutional shit,
twisting things. Yeah,
destroy
but so
institutions,
he doesn't say
and
that,
then
right?
become.
He says the constitution gives the president a lot of power. So he's trying
No,
to at least
no,
make it appear as if this can happen constitutionally, but
no,
it can't. It
no.
has
It's
to
a
go
checks
through the
and
constitutional
balances.
process. Checks and
Checks
balances,
and
yeah.
balances, yeah.
So after that, you just make someone president, and the president makes a lot of policies for 20 years.
Oh yeah,
How
मतलब
does
वो
that work?
basically वही बोल रहा है ना कि अगर ये आदमी ज्ञानी आदमी पहुंच गया उधर तक and nobody is opposing him and he has basically no accountability is what he's saying, 20 साल के
Hmm.
लिए he can do whatever the hell he wants, then it's a more stable system. Of course it's a more stable system, right?
But
But
it's
it's
not
not the
good.
right system. like stability and what is correct is two different things.
If a government remains in power for 50 years, right?
Yeah.
The BJP is fond of pointing out the Congress was in power for 50
Congress was
years.
in power for
That
yeah,
was
70
stable,
years also.
right?
Yeah.
It was a stable
Yeah.
government. But
Yeah.
was it good according to you? No, you guys
No.
are the ones who whine about it all the time.
And that's the thing, it's so bizarre when there are the argument just flips so suddenly, right? Like where like, for example, the Indira Gandhi emergency was terrible,
Yeah.
right? Like, you read accounts of how journalists were treated, how the BJP was treated, how
Yeah,
all
yeah,
the
yeah.
leaders that were there during this time. I
All the
think
BJP leaders who rose to prominence because specifically they were opposed to the emergency, including
they were
Arun
all
Jaitley.
student leaders back then,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And they were like basically Kanhaiya Kumar now,
yeah.
right? They essentially like are like protesting in DU, they were protesting in JNU, they were protesting against the dictatorship of Indira Gandhi, etc. Right? Because it was an emergency, right?
Hmm.
The media was completely controlled.
Hmm.
There was complete control over information, all the things, right? It was a terrible time. Like there are these middle class Brahmin people who are like, "Arey, ट्रेन तो टाइम पे आती थी
ट्रेन
उस
टाइम
समय."
पे आती थी क्योंकि उनको
This is
ट्रेन के
the
अलावा
thing.
किसी और चीज के साथ डील नहीं करना पड़ता था.
Exactly. They are like, और सब स्टेबल था, ट्रेन तो टाइम पे आती थी.
Train is the
That's why
barometer
we
to
loved.
reality.
Like, क्या बात कर रहे हो यार? Like, seriously?
These guys travel to a country and they receive news about whether country is doing well economically, is there oppression or all. Wait, let me
Oh.
go to the railway station and find out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Train
Like
coming on
जाओ
time. If it
ट्रेन
is, then
ट्रेन
I'm
टाइम पे
okay.
आ रही है ना, सब चल रहा है, सब चंगा सी, अब तो क्या मतलब, और क्या ही चाहिए ट्रेन समय पे आ रहा है तो.
It's another controversial statement. But Islam also colonized us. They put in a new language, they put in new ways of thinking, new religion,
Yes.
new loyalty to the Middle East countries, not to our, this is not their bhumi, this is not their soil. So we have been colonized for 1200 years. And to counter that, we'll need a century. We need this whole century to recover ourselves. And that requires leaders who are strong and stable long term.
Okay.
So the Mughals were not actually causing us to have allegiance to outside nations. The Mughals settled here. They had kids here. Their kids became kings, and you can have different opinions about kingship as good or bad, etc. But the Mughals were definitely an Indian empire. They
Yeah.
were an Indian Islamic empire.
And also like the whole fact about, oh, हमको colonize किया, they colonized you using the same system that you're advocating for.
Yeah.
They were
Stability.
essentially following like the feudal dictatorial systems that you are so like, oh, एक आदमी को power दे दो.
Yeah,
That's
that's a
what
very
they
good point.
did.
Yeah.
That, I mean, like literally the reason why like all these, you know, like atrocities that people talk about, right? I was just watching another BeerBiceps video for my thing, about someone who, I think Chawda, there is this
Abhijit
guy who
Chawda.
keeps, Abhijit Chawda, who keeps saying that so Khilji came in and burnt like the Takshashila University ki library or something, and therefore all our knowledge of the entire subcontinent was lost.
Quantum physics. Yeah.
Yeah, and therefore like basically when the British came after that and we were telling them that, oh look, this is our history, they were like, written record dikhao. And therefore, because there is no written record, therefore they said, oh, this is mythology, which is Ramayana and Mahabharata. So now we can no longer call this history anymore because we don't have written record, because Khilji burnt the entire thing apparently. Again, these people don't understand that India was not a thing before. Like, I mean, like before the British actually, through anger, like literally by pissing a lot of people off across the subcontinent, brought us together as a united front against them, right? That is why India is also like
Yeah, the political
exists,
unit that we know as India in this
is,
day and age is the
yeah,
result of the political systems that came into being at the time of the British occupation.
absolutely. Before
By the
that,
way,
like,
what this guy is saying about people who came from outside and imposed an external system applies very well to the British. They
it
came,
does,
they
but
imposed the system for profit, and then they left. It does
no,
not apply that
also
much to the Mughals.
also the Mughals, right? If you look at the Mughal rule, where it was cow built, no, mostly. And
Yeah,
like Nietzsche, if you talk about Odisha, right?
yeah.
Odisha had a completely different set of Kalinga kings,
Yeah.
right? You know,
And we
then
had
there was,
our main problem was Marathas.
yeah, your problem was Marathas. That's true. And Marathas ka problem were you guys, right?
Yeah,
And like,
yeah.
and Tamil kings were there separately, right?
Yeah, they had their entire thing.
There's literally, evidence in the Angkor Wat of, from Odisha and all these areas, how religion traveled, Hinduism traveled to Cambodia,
Hmm.
right? And there were like temples built in the name of Hindu kings, but they were very different interpretations that what we know right now, right? There is a Ramayana ka whole fresco made in Angkor
Yeah.
Wat, very ancient
Angkor
one,
Wat.
right? And Mahabharata as well. But what they portray is completely different because their interpretation must be different.
Yeah.
But the point is that when they talk about, oh, India ko colonize kiya tha, right? The whole point is that there were very, very separate kingdoms, which were, one giant kingdom was here, one was in the coast, one was here. We were not united. We were fighting against each other. Like those kings were also fighting against each other, trying to expand their territory. So it's like they had their own little countries also.
Before I let you move forward, I want you to address all the people who are left-leaning, who are listening to this podcast and are about to switch off because they have categorized you as right-leaning.
Hello.
So I don't believe in left or right. I
Hello.
believe that you have to look
He
at the
doesn't
logic.
believe in left
I mean,
or right.
I'm left-leaning on some issues, right-leaning on other issues. I
Centrist
believe
आदमी
in
है.
free enterprise, which the right-leaning people are supposed to be. But I'm very liberal in terms of rights of human beings. I want everybody to have rights. I want to end exploitation.
Apparently, those rights don't extend to the right to vote or to
It
decide
doesn't,
what
no,
happens in the system of
apparently.
the country. But on every
Yeah.
other front, he's very right-leaning. Sorry,
Yeah,
left-leaning.
absolutely. All
I
people
love it
need to
how
have rights. All people need to have rights, but some people are stupid and they deserve less
they
rights.
don't need
Okay,
that. They can't.
yeah,
They don't know what
thoda
is
kam
good
de
for
do
them.
unko.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't know what is good for them. The smart people deserve more rights than the. But I am okay with all people having rights.
I don't want oligarchy. I certainly don't want ultra rich. I don't want concentration of wealth, concentration of power. So in those senses, I'm not right wing. I'm
What were you saying all this while? Concentration of power has been the theme of this entire
Yeah,
conversation. He doesn't want
concentration of
concentration of
wealth
power.
is what he's talking about now. Basically, that is like interconnected. No, like I mean, like do you understand how it's interconnected? Wealth,
He also said
power.
concentration of power. No, the conversation starts with, let us concentrate all power in one man. And then he says,
Yeah,
I'm not in favor of concentration of power. What the duck were you talking about all this while? I think it's
seriously,
very
dude.
amusing that in most of these right wing conversations,
Huh.
obviously they will not say that they're the left, but they will say that we are close to the center. The right likes to pretend that it is close to the center when the goal is to indoctrinate young minds, which may not necessarily be right wing. So they will think, okay, I'm not going to the right wing, I'm thinking like a centrist. And then
Hmm.
they arrive at the center, and after some time, the carpet gets pulled out from under their ground feet, and turns out they're on the right.
Yeah, and also like the whole thing about free market, right? The thing I always qualify with is, um, I'm okay with free enterprise and free market, okay,
Hmm.
but I also understand there needs to be regulation, right? I mean, like if you let companies do whatever the hell they want all the time,
Yeah.
it is not good for us. Like if profit is the sole motive of enterprise, and that is what is causing innovation, that is not good for us, right? There are certain things which need to be also done out of humanitarian welfare needs, right? Which is like education, public utility, like health education. There are people from the US who come to India to get
Hmm.
their like healthcare done, right?
Yeah.
Like medical tourism, everybody knows
Medical
about it,
tourism.
right?
Yeah.
It's cheaper here. The reason why it's cheaper here is because we are not letting it completely become like a free market, right? We still have government hospitals, we
It's
still have
subsidized.
good
Yeah.
government
It's
hospitals. It's
subsidized
subsidized.
to a great degree for many
Yeah,
categories of people. Yeah.
plus generic drugs are allowed to exist here,
Oh yeah,
right? I
there was
mean,
this legendary Supreme Court judgment some years ago where American pharmaceutical companies were like, "You can't decide the price of our goods," and the
mm,
Supreme Court said, "Yeah, sure, but we are going to allow our people to copy your stuff because
exactly, yeah.
medicines are not a consumer good.
Yeah,
Medicines
it
are
is.
important so that people can survive."
Yeah. Oh my
But
god, dude. Whoa, what was that?
were you
This
prepared? Were you prepared for this when I said, "Hey guys, let's do a reaction video"?
I wasn't actually. I didn't know what you were bringing in. And the thing is, I've been doing research on this fellow as well, right? And I'm trying to see, like, so the thing I'm trying to make is not exactly about him, but to make a point
Hmm.
about who he is. I am trying to see ki kya karta hai ye aadmi, kidhar
Hmm.
hai, whatever, right? Because I'm not a big consumer of his fun content, right? Yeah, I mean, I know clips like these exist, right? Which is yeah, like he also has like clips with like again like people like Chowda and whatever
Oh, the
whatever.
entire range of loonies.
Yeah.
Every single हम मतलब हिंदू खतरे में है brigade face
Hmm.
on social media. He has had as a guest, including conspiracy theorists like Praveen Mohan.
We have to understand who his audience is, right?
Hmm.
His audience is not people like us. Like
Yeah,
I doubt we watch any of us or any of my friend
his
circle
audience
even
is
watches.
a younger and b more confused about
More
who they want to
confused.
be in life. So they're being targeted at a young age by
I'll
everyone
I'll
who
tell
finds
you.
his platform useful.
For example, right, like one person I was talking to was saying that his audience are fence sitters, which is like basically centrist,
Yeah, that's
right?
what I'm saying. Yeah, yeah.
I'm saying otherwise. I'm saying
Okay.
his audience are people who don't even know a fence exists. They don't even know there are two sides.
Won't that
Like they
count as fence sitting?
no, but like he shows them the fence, na first. Like he's
Hmm.
the one who is first showing them the fence, right,
Yeah,
and
but
then making them
the
fence
thing he's
sitters.
pointing at is not the fence. It is quite deep in right wing territory.
But you do realize that he always gets enough kooky people apparently to
Hmm.
essentially also like try to balance it out, because that's what he
Hmm.
keeps saying, right? Ki, "Aur balance rehna chahiye." right?
Yeah, yeah,
Even
yeah.
now in this very clip, he's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
invited a person who is saying that I'm very balanced, when in reality he's not, right? But the audience is like, अरे क्या मस्त balanced आदमी लाया ये तो
हाँ.
बोल रहा है कि लेफ्ट विंग भी है राइट विंग भी है, तो फिर so see that's what is happening, right? His audience is coming into this podcast just like to watch, and it's Ranveer Alabadia and his guests who are showing them कि अच्छा वो देख वो फेंस है उधर उस पे बैठना है तुझे, राइट? एंड ये वो साइड है और वो साइड है, एंड दिस इज हाउ आवर पर्सपेक्टिव्स आर अबाउट द साइड. एक साइड ने पूरा डिस्ट्रॉय कर दिया इंडिया का कल्चर, राइट? एंड दे आर द एनिमीज, एंड द अदर साइड इज कि ओ सब सब अच्छा है एंड दे शुड
Hmm.
रूल फॉर 20 years, right? And
What
that
he's
they will
pointing
fix
at is
everything.
these guys have made a fake fence, right? It looks like a fence,
Yeah,
it behaves like a fence. It is
yeah.
deep inside right wing territory, and he's pointing at that fence. He's sitting at it and he's
Hmm.
pointing at it and telling people, come be here, and you will
Hmm.
be in the middle.
Hmm.
And the people who
And
don't know where right is, where left is, what is, how the spectrum is, they will
right,
go sit on that fence
yeah.
thinking that they're centrist when they will actually not be centrist, they will be right wingers.
No, and also like his logic is very clear, right? And he says it like openly also, right? Why he does this, why Beer Biceps does this, right? There is a podcast he went to recently where they asked him कि अरे ये भूत प्रेत येटी वाले कहानी आप करते हो, like you whatever. So he's like, no, पहले ना मैं सोचता था कि मैं बस business के podcast करूंगा, like मुझे आता है business, मैं understand business, so I'll do that. But then what happened is like मेरे ना अंदर एक बच्चा है जो बाहर आया और बोला कि मैं भूत प्रेत की बात करूंगा, और फिर व्यूज बढ़ने लगे. Now everything I say and do is for views and content, okay? और ये चल रहा है तो मैं चलाऊंगा. See, that's the logic he's going by. He's not even interested in what is happening to people, what is the effect that his podcasts are having on people, whether they know offense, whether they understand what politics is, whether they even understand what a president does,
Hmm.
right? So he's basically just एक, मेरे को तो कंटेंट चाहिए ना, लोग आउटरीच करेंगे या फिर लोग बोलेंगे अरे ये तो क्या मस्त आदमी है, सही बोला, व्हाटएवर ही इज
Yeah.
गेटिंग द प्रेज कि अरे तू आदमी लेके आया मस्त हमारे पास, स्पिरिचुअल अवेकनिंग हो गया मेरा, अब तो मैं आईएएस की पढ़ाई करके सो जाएगा. जो फक ऑफ मैन, लाइक आई मीन क्या चल रहा है ये? सीरियसली.
But yeah, good fun. I mean, not
Yeah.
good fun, kind of a horrifying evening spent
No.
watching complete garbage from an uncle who probably belongs. By the way, I don't underestimate Rajiv Malhotra's ability to make someone president.
Yeah.
He did it for Nityanand, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like,
If that is the
wasn't
formula,
he?
if that is the format this is going to follow, like this guy is going to leave and start an island nation somewhere, I'm completely in favor.
Didn't Rajiv Malhotra, isn't he the person who started a company with Nityanand to like take all your wealth and give it to you in the next life?
There is
Isn't
a
he the
video and
guy?
they were talking about. I don't even know if they were serious about it, if it were half joking. But he has, in all seriousness, supported other things which are quite problematic, like superstitious practices like third eye awakening, or
Oh my
and
God.
there's this amusing video where a bunch of children at some ashram put a blindfold around their eye. The blindfold is like this, right? And apparently they can see through it like this way and this way.
Uh-huh.
So he writes something on a paper and he says, can you read it? And the child takes it and holds it like this and then reads it. And this guy is blown away. He's blown away. I'll share that video with you and you'll find out. And it's been debunked over and over again. This is comparable to, have you seen BeerBiceps का वो episode where someone pulls a Rudraksh out of thin air and he's like, oh, ये कैसे हो गया? So cool. Thank you, Meghnad, for doing this. I hope we can do this again sometime. I don't even know if this video is going to get going to be allowed to stay on YouTube, but we will try it. We will put it out and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Meghnad, your video is about what?
It's basically going to be about Beer Biceps. But not exactly Beer Biceps, but the
It's
interviews that
focusing
he's
on
doing with
BeerBiceps in
politicians.
general or on a specific conversation on his podcast?
It's basically focusing on his series of interviews that he's doing, which is
Okay.
the minister interviews, right? Specifically.
Okay.
And I'm talking mostly about the minister and their work, not
Okay.
really Beer Biceps, but also like this, right? Which is what I'm talking about. The what is the message that is going to the audience and how we need to really think about this more critically before it gets out of hand.
Thank you, Meghnad, for doing
Thank
this.
you, sir.
And everyone who's been watching, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. I make content about skepticism and Indian atheism and stuff like that. And we talk about other things also, but primarily that is what this channel is about. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.